Okay, Satnam, Suzanne, welcome.
Hi. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, who else is here?
Tina Pendleton.
Say your name again, dear.
Tina Pendleton.
Hi, Tina, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Good to have you with us. Where are you from?
I'm a Guru Ravi's student.
Oh, that's right. Oh, of course. I knew your name was familiar. Bless you, dear.
Thank you.
Who else is here?
Sadhna.
Hi, Sadhna. How are you?
Good. How are you today?
Good. I saw on TV that we're both having a big drought right now.
Yes, we have a ton of heat.
God bless. And they still haven't found those two little girls. God bless them.
No, they haven't.
So we'll keep up heartbreak for them. I beg your pardon?
Yes.
I didn't hear about that.
Sadhna, you want to say?
Yes, an 8-year-old and 11-year-old since Friday have been missing. And they're draining the lake now where they found their bikes, but they dredged it and found nothing, but they wanted to do that to be absolutely certain.
This
and
is
the community,
Idaho. This is the Idaho story.
Iowa.
Okay, I did know about that, yeah. Wow.
So God bless. We're still sending them heart breath.
The town is in prayer and somber, but really focused and really loving. It's very beautiful.
Oh, that is so wonderful, dear.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, dear.
Thank you. Yes.
And who else is here?
Tamasin Rahmani.
Welcome.
Thanks.
Yeah, glad to have you on this beautiful and clear day. And who else is here?
Hadi Munder.
Hargo-Ben.
Hadi Munderkar and Hargo-Ben. Welcome. Glad to have you both. And who else is here?
Carol.
Hi, Carol. How you doing?
Just great.
Oh, I'm glad to hear it. And who else? Well, there have been some more little dingy bells there. Okay. So, is most everybody enjoying a drought?
No.
I have rain in Florida.
Oh, my God. Send some over. I guess Juneau has rain, too, huh?
We had the rainiest June on record.
No.
Hi.
Use the rain turtle. Use the technology of the rain turtle.
The rain turtle.
I don't know what it is.
Well, heck, Hargo-Ben, send that rain turtle over here.
That's what Guru Ravi Kaur's kids say.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness.
I posted something on my Hargo-Ben Facebook page about the rain turtle.
Oh, would you put it on the Soul Answer group page?
Sure, I will.
Oh, I would enjoy that. Thank you.
Sure.
We're having a good time with our Facebook group, aren't we?
Uh-huh.
Oh, my gosh. A lot of people are involved. Okay, so who else is here? Okay. So that must mean it's time to get started. Okay, so please sit straight. Good. Long, deep breath. Relaxing in your third eye point. Good. And inhale. Long deep breath. Good. Long deep breath. Opening. Good. And begin heart breath. Begin heart breath. Let your own heart heal. Let it expand. Good. Feel the flavor of your own heart. Feel how precious it is. Good. And now please send this beautiful heart breath to each one, to really enlighten, to power up this incredible connection among us. Sort of like a nuclear reactor. Continue to power it. On a very, very personal level, on a note, on a harmony of love. Let it happen. Use your heart breath. Good. And now this beautiful, extraordinary bright light of our combined essences, please send it to your own intention as well as to the search for these two little girls in Iowa. Sadhna, what are their names?
Elizabeth and Lyric.
Elizabeth and Lyric. Thank you. And also please send it to Syria. Syria seems to be having some breakthrough these days, for which we are very grateful. And would you also add in there the intention of Sikh Dharma International as we rebuild? Good. Keep it up. What a beautiful dance is happening. It's kind of like dancing at a campfire. Keep up, please. And also include Metta. Hargoben Ranjit Sen, Guru Ravi's niece. Please include her as well. And a member of our tribe. And of course, include any members of our tribe who need this healing energy. Good. And inhale and exhale. But do keep up your regular heart breath. I was going to say, Baba Siri Chand says, but it sounds like, sir, is it Yogi Bhajan online? He says, yes, of course I'm here. Okay, sir. He says there's nothing like, he calls it a group prophet. He says to enlighten, to give sanctity, to give grace to the world. And I'm saying, sir, what do you mean by a prophet? He says, it doesn't necessarily mean somebody who talks about the future. He says it means that as a group consciousness, he says you live in the solid present so that you may allow the energies, the consciousness, the information of the universe, the universal, he says, to be present with you. He says, as you are present with this all-commanding energy, he says you allow it to, he says you allow the world to immerse itself in it. You allow the presence that comes through you to give succor, to give kindness, to give mercy. He says, if your name is Dayal, for instance, it is normally translated as mercy. But it is the mercy of your presence, the mercy of allowing the presence that is always present for you, but opening to it and allowing it to flow through you. He says the key here is opening yourself to be this, to allow this presence of who you are, that's with a capital W. He says your kindness is unmistakable when you live in this presence. Your awareness is unmistakable when you live in this presence. He says someone can regard you from way across the parking lot and still notice your presence. He says you're not doing this to have someone recognize you, of course. He says, but he wants to be emphatic so that you understand that nobody is standing alone, nobody is standing behind anybody. It means that you come forward, that you be present, that you allow yourself to be known. He says, I know so many of you have been hidden devotees in other lifetimes. Many of you have been cave yogis. Many of you have been separated within the walls of monasteries. He says, in there you may have attained the presence. He says, now, my dear ones, you have come back in this very special time, this very special operation of time, in order to allow that presence to flow through you. He says you have gained the insight. You have gained the knowledge. You have allowed that knowledge to return to you, and you will continue to allow that to grow larger and larger within you. He said it is a wisdom that is seeking to be known by you in this everyday presence. He says, please discover yourselves as you throw off the shrouds of ambiguity. He says, throw off the inhibition that may have kept you frozen, because perhaps you felt that as you stepped into your presence, as you step into your knowledge, as you step into what you call the healing presence or the healing ability, you may have thought that you were off course. He says, as you are knowing now, he said it is a culture that is off course. He says, please right yourself. Please right yourself. He's showing me tugboats pushing an ocean liner. He says, the tugboats are the aspects of you that know who you are. He says, and they are pushing the whole of you in the proper direction. He says, allow that to happen now. He's talking about the Mole Mantra. Ekonkar, Satnam, Kartapurk, Nirbol, Nirver, Akal Mudit, Ajuni, Saibang, Guru Prasad Jap, Ad Sach, Jugad Sach, Hari Sach, Nanakahosidi Sach. He says, make a full study of that. Make a full study of that. He says that is Guru Nanak in his full description of who each one of you is. He says you are the infinity. You are the creator of heaven and earth. You are true. You are the truth manifesting on this earth. He says, you are, you give, you have, you embody. You embody the great blessing of life here on earth in this apparent closed-off consciousness. He says your quest, he says other cultures call it savior, but he says your quest in saviorhood is to know who you are. He says that's your relocation to the impersonal. He says the impersonal is not cut off. He says, in fact, the gargantuan impersonal is absolutely coziness. He says, so never think that when you go to the impersonal unknown that you're leaving behind all the juicy human qualities. He says, in fact, my dears, he says you are divesting yourself of separation. As you go into the impersonal universal, as you open to that knowledge of who you already are, he says you understand that there is beyond support. Support implies that something is falling apart, something is falling down. He says you go far beyond that. You go into the pure presence of all working with total synchronicity, total combined action. He says that is who you are. That is the blessing of you. Keep up the breath. He says, please enter that portal now. He says, go to your third eye, relax and rest there, project. And be who you are. Be who you are. Know your preciousness. Know the vigor of your preciousness. And be present. Be present as the impersonal universal. He says, and what do you find there? What do you find? He says, take anything that may have been keeping you separate. For instance, worry. Maybe it's worry about how you look. Maybe it's anxiety about your job. Maybe it's worry about a relationship. Maybe it's the fear that comes with pain and separation. He says, now put that in your suitcase. And humbly, as a great devotee of the impersonal universal that is you, Ek Onkar Sat Nam, offer that suitcase to the impersonal universal of you. Let it be opened. Let that suitcase be opened. He said, and let that quality, that worry, that pain, whatever it is, he says, let it be cared for by the impersonal universal. He says there's no sentimentality in this position of the impersonal universal. No sentimentality. He said, and as was in your newsletter, he says, of my words, he says there is no mood. There's no up or down. There is no judgment, up or down, high or low. No judgment, no remorse. Just pure presence. Use your breath, please. He says, in this condition, there are no worries. In this condition, even if you were being trampled by horses, there are no worries. All is present. All is present. He says Guru Arjan was the son of Guru Ramdas. Guru Arjan, because of a dispute with the emperor, would not back down from truth. The emperor, in his sort of backwards way of maintaining his faith, so to speak, he had Guru Arjan sit on a hot plate, which is a big grill, basically. And for days he sat there, being cooked alive. And when asked by his friend, he said, Arjan, you can get off of this hot plate. You have the power to do that. Arjan said, where would I go? He says, I am the hot plate. I am the one who has put me here. I am the fire. In other words, he was in the impersonal universal. He knew that all was one. Far beyond just knowing it, he experienced it. He was it. He is it, without limit of time or space. He says, that is you. That is you. He says, as I've said many times before, you are not a human trying to have a spiritual experience. You are soul, the impersonal universal, having a human experience. And in your devotion to the impersonal universal, he says, please allow the experience, allow the human experience. He says, and offer it is the very best devotion to your soul. Keep up the breath. He says you may see this similar to a cat who catches a bird or a mouse and offers it in great devotion to its owner, great love, great kindness. And of course the owner is not exactly tickled. He says you may see it as that. But he says, in fact, my dear ones, the impersonal universal, the ekonkar, kartapurk, nirbo nirver, akal murit ajuni saibam guru prasad jap, is all waiting for you. Is waiting for you to give every tidbit, every ounce, every millisecond to the impersonal universal, the great unknown. He said it is a constant. It is a constant. And it is the fact of union. He says, now when you do that, it does not mean that you cannot operate in this everyday world. He says, oh no. In fact, you can operate in this world with so much more speed, so much more alacrity, so much more awareness and ability than you could if you held yourself back from the impersonal universal. He said when you hold yourself back, when you hold yourself in this small awareness, he says you don't have the freedom. He says what you often call greased lightning. He says you don't have that. He says when you keep yourself in confined, as he used to call the prisoner of the rib cage. When you keep yourself confined as a prisoner within your imagined limits that you may have picked up from lifetimes, from the society, from your parents, from your ancestors, when you maintain those walls, he says you are so stuck. He said, have you ever been out in really deep mud in the spring? He says, you can't get anywhere. You slip, you slide, you get stuck. He says, why would you opt for that? Once you become aware, why would you opt for that? Why would you opt for being stuck and slippery? He says, offer all, especially imagined or what you may call real limitations, worries, anxieties, pains. He says, give them, is very special in kind, devoted offerings. He says, pass that suitcase along to the impersonal universal. That is you. It is the infinity. It is you. Keep up the breath. And be sure that your presence, your awareness of presence, is switched into the awareness of you as the impersonal universal. As you feel it, he says, do you feel that blessing? He says that is, he calls it the quotient of blessing. And I'm saying, what does that mean, sir, the quotient of blessing? He says the blessing is founded in, projects from, flows from this universal presence. He said the quotient aspect comes from however large or small you accept it or let it flow. He says, however greatly you allow your humility to accept it, to allow it. There is your quotient. He said it is regulated by the aperture that you allow, that you create. He says, in essence, he says, at your time of death, and he's not just talking about physical death, he's also talking about the death of our need to keep ourselves small. He says, at that time, you fling away that aperture to let it flow like an avalanche through every bit of your body and every bit of your consciousness. He says, this is what is meant to be dead while yet alive. He says this being dead has to do actually with becoming totally alive. Allow yourself to become totally alive now. Allow your aperture to open. Allow it to open. He says, so many of you keep grasp on your old ways of limitation. He says, because at least they are comfortable to you to some extent. You know it. You know the pain. You are comfortable in your own pain, in your own anxiety, in your own self-hurt and self-blame. He says there's a comfort. You find a comfort in that. He says, when you're ready. He says, even before you're ready. He says, let the aperture go. Let the clinging to limitedness. He says, let it dissolve. He says, fling it to me. I'll take it. He says, Baba Siri Chand in here and I are here. He says, are here to be your Batman. He doesn't mean the guy with the wings. He's talking about cricket, what we call the batter. He says, we will bat the ball. He says, we will bat the ball of your consciousness. He says, but first you have to throw it, fling it to us. He says, we will go through the whole process of hand signals. What am I going to do? What are you going to do? He says, we'll play that game with you. But finally, he says, give it. Throw it. Give it up now. Now. He says, in a play in cricket and baseball, you never know what's going to happen next. He says, so why are you so held tight that you should know what is going to happen next in your life. He says, let it go. Let it go so that your destiny can flow through you. He says, put yourself on the ship of the Guru and let Guru take charge. Flow in the unknown. Flow in the unknown. He says, what precious apparitions of the divinity that you are. He says, I want you to look into what we might call the magic mirror. He says, I want you to see the full definition of the unknown, traipsing about as the known. Now. He says, do it now. Look in that mirror of love to love yourself. Oh, yes. He says, I know you've heard this over and over again, but he says, how are you going to accept yourself if you don't love yourself? He says, so much difficult conditioning has made you feel that not loving yourself is the holy thing to do. He says, how can you see the light? How can you be the light? How can you express your dignity and your divinity if you do not love yourself? It is this pure love of your great self, of your holiness, of your divinity, of your connection, of the everyday self, amalgamated with the pure self, that is the real expression of divinity, that heals not only you, but it spills over and heals others. He says, if you are serious about living your divinity, of living your destiny, he says, start at home now. Start at home now. Remember this hugeness, this vastness of the infinity, of the impersonal universal. It's not out there. Oh, no. Oh, no, my brothers and sisters of destiny. The impersonal is within. It is who you are. And once you discover who you are, you have the experience of all. So please do not overlook yourself. Never berate yourself. Never bypass yourself. Never depend. He says you may look for direction from others. He says, but, my dears, know that the absolute direction comes from your own impersonal universal. He says, can you feel that now? Can you feel that in your heart? Can you feel the impersonal universal of you, the Ekonkar, Sat Nam, is the presence of you? He says, and now look around and see that in all others. Even see it in those who you would say try to persecute you. See it. Because, my dears, that action is the Shiva aspect of the impersonal universal. He says, no need to fear it. No need to separate yourself. But to rather be pure and present. What else could there be? It means no fear to separate yourself. No fear that moves you to separate yourself. To create what you feel gives you security. He said that kind of, quote, security is absolute insecurity. He says you build your little mud huts when you use fear to create a separateness, a separate nation. He says, then you only live in anxiety and pain. You only continue it. As you divest yourself of the fear, as you forgive it, as you give it to the infinity, as you give it to Guru Ram Dass or any of us, he says, give it. Give it. That is what we want. We want it. Give it. So that we may hold it for you, so that we may transform it for you. And consequently, allow yourself then to step into the unlimited divinity of who you are. Let it grace you. Let it hold you. Let it be your regal gown and crown. He says, let the perfection occur. When I talk about perfection, I'm not talking about the same kind of perfection according to standards that you have developed in your mind. No. I am talking about the perfection of being present, of moving with the dance, of allowing the consciousness. And there, my dears, is where you depend. That is where you trust. Trusting the pure unknown to flow, to unravel through you, as you. It is the dance. It is the greatest drama. Play it well, he says. Play it well. Good. He says, know yourself. That's with a capital S. Know yourself as yourself. He says, you are learning plenty. You have learned plenty. You have the basic knowledge. Allow it to happen. He says, and now, dear ones, as is our habit, will you please express your experience so that you may have it grow within yourself and also have it impressed with others. Okay, he says, okay, now who can step forward? Who will step forward? Who has the courage to step forward first? Anybody?
Siri Gian?
Yes.
It's Rahmane.
Hi, dear.
Hey, I really enjoyed these moments with you and with everyone. And the way you were talking about death and returning to this immaculate purity of our essence reminds me of, in the Semitic tradition, the importance of the word that was translated Genesis, and it means, in the Semitic languages, it's something like Bereshit, and it has to do with the beginningless beginning, and it's where everything begins, but it's without beginning, this beginningless beginning, and it's in every moment, and it's also, I think, that the meaning of the word to be reborn is to start again at that immaculate, limitless, pure potentiality of each moment. And so it was a very powerful meditation that you facilitated for me in the just bypassing all of the conditioned muck to just go back to that Ekankar or Bereshit or the power of now. It's so simple. It's so clean. It's so direct. And I thought it was really amusing that I think it was the Siri Singh Sahib bringing in the cricket image because, of course, that was part of his past as a boy. And so it brought in kind of the impersonal personal or the impersonal imagery that was very personal. And I found that a wonderful juxtaposition of this vast consciousness, and yet because he was in human form, it was a time and space when he used to play cricket. And anyway, I really enjoyed it, so thank you.
Oh, good. As soon as I said the word Batman, I went, oh, better explain this.
Yeah.
Good. Well, thank you so much, dear. What you're talking about is going back to pure innocence, but not weak and unknowing innocence. It's a pure. It is the all knowledge that comes through innocence.
Yes, so, and it reminds me of near Bo and near Ver, that before or beyond the snags.
Right, without fear and without revenge.
Yeah, and then the Niranjan, the purity of the word within the word Niranjan, that's the purity too. Yeah.
Good. Okay, thank you so much, dear.
Thank you.
Okay, now who else can share?
Siri Gian, can I read something of Tomas's that relates to this beginningless beginning
of course.
Purity? It's called The Frameless Mainstay of Creation. Frameless Mainstay of Creation. Before beginnings or endings, the interblending of nameless, sustainable exchanges became name incarnate. As presence and absence of being, co-eternally deified the unassignable gasp of creation, releasing prolapse into ceaseless rebirth and endless ascension.
My goodness. When you
want to hear it again? Want to hear it again? It's pretty dense.
Yes, because when you read it, it really throws your mind from one side to the other side. You know what I'm saying?
Yes, and out the edges.
Huh?
And out the edges.
That's right. So you're left with why? Why? Okay. Do it again, please.
Frameless mainstay of creation. Before beginnings or endings, the interblending of nameless, sustainable exchanges became name incarnate. As presence and absence of being, co-eternally deified the unassignable gasp of creation, releasing prolapse into ceaseless rebirth and endless ascension.
Wonderful. Wonderful. That pretty much sums it up, doesn't it? As if it could be summed up.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm going to mute.
Thank you so much, Tomas. We really appreciate that. So, who else can share? We're just sharing our presence. Breathe and share your presence. Carol, would you like to share? Carol, are you still here?
Yeah, I'm here. I'm trying to think of how to make this experience into words that I can share.
Well, that always is a challenge, isn't it?
Yeah, and so now you realize where my hesitation comes from. I was focusing on the fear of separateness in my relationship to others around me. And I was seeing that, yeah, I have a definite problem, I think, sometimes with fear and accepting other people. So I didn't get to the bottom of it yet. I'm going, I better take a really good look at this, and I should see what it is that sets off my fear in people. And if it's the same thing all the time, if there's a few different kinds of things, so I should take care of this.
I think you have struck on something that is quite profound that happens with most of us. Will you just take a minute to do some heart breath here and to go deeply into it? To discover the root of what's going on. Are you finding clues?
Yes, I found a big clue. I think it has more to do with one of the jobs that I have when I'm working for people. I'm not exactly myself.
Oh, would you explain that? Would you explain that?
Because I'm working for them, I'm making it a point to be accepting of what they're doing and what they're saying and their belief system and how they feel about the world. And I try not to be confrontational with, I don't feel that way or I don't think that way. And I try to just kind of bland it out a little bit and not and take it with lightness. That I can't really change the way somebody else lives their life or feels. And when I do that, then I am not in my universal and impersonal. And when I need to be there, I'm not there, and then the fear comes in.
So what's the remedy?
Oh, well, something's got to change. Somehow, maybe I can blend the two of that place where I need to be accepting of the people I'm working with and not lose my universal and impersonal. I'm not seeing this really clearly. I feel it really strongly that I'm just on the edge of what it is. Something like that.
I think that's wonderful. So how about this? He said today that even with people who torture you, he says that's the action of Shiva. In other words, that's the aspect that tears things apart.
Right.
So maybe it is understanding that all is the impersonal universal, no matter if we agree with people or we don't.
Yeah.
But you never lose your own center, your own infinity. You simply see how it's being carried out by different, different projections of the impersonal universal. Does that make any sense? Is that a help or not?
Yes, it is a help, and it's really wonderful because I didn't even realize this was quite a problem until today. Well, maybe I realized it was a problem, but I didn't really have. I didn't have any insight whatsoever on how to unravel it. Yeah,
so,
this is wonderful.
Good. So you stay in your own impersonal universal, and you recognize it everywhere in every aspect. No judgment of high or low. My own personal biggest struggle with that was when Mr. Bush was president. I just could not get over that. Until I finally realized it's time to break down the old culture, the Piscean, and I thought, okay, here's the guy with the pitchfork, here's the guy with the what do you call it, air hammer or whatever it is, jackhammer. And of course, Baba Siri Chand always tells us to do heart breath for the other political party. So it's all a matter of consciousness. Well, thank you so much for going through that transition with us, leading us through it.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so now, is Kehar here? Okay. So now we are going to do the closing song. Okay, so sit straight, please. Palms together. Relax in your third eye. And inhale to begin. May the Valentine sun shine upon you. All love surround you. And the pure light within you guide your way on. Guide your way on. Guide your way on. Inhale. Bow to the infinity. Bow to who you are. Bow to your own and the great, unlimited, impersonal universal. Love you all. Talk to you next week. Have a wonderful week. Sadam.
Satnam.